Welcome back to Inside Politics. We're talking 2016 presidential politics with the Iowa caucus coming up on Monday and the New Hampshire primary the following week. We're talking with Steve Gill and Larry Woods. Larry, let's turn a little bit more to the Democrats. It appears from some of the polls that feel the burn, that Hillary Clinton's feeling the burn. She might not make it in Iowa, where she had a problem 8 years ago, and that's where Barack Obama became. Is she going to lose this?
This has got to be a tough stretch of the campaign for Hillary Clinton. She's got to be having some nightmare flashbacks to 8 years ago with then Senator Obama. I think it's going to be very close in Iowa, which everybody's going to view as a loss for Hillary Clinton because, as we all know, she was the favorite, the overwhelming favorite at the start, and therefore clearly Sanders has moved way up, Hillary's moved down some. So even if Hillary ekes it out by a point or two, it's going to be viewed as a win for Sanders, and there's the distinct possibility Sanders may win Iowa.
And beyond that, Steve, if she loses in Iowa, it almost certain it appears she's probably going to lose in New Hampshire. Nobody has her ahead there. She did win there 8 years ago, sort of emulating her husband's comeback kid situation. But Sanders is a favorite son up in that area. I mean, New Hampshire and Vermont are next to each other.
She's way behind in the polls in New Hampshire, and I think if he is able to win in Iowa, that does give her added trouble there. The difference, though, in these two states, very small voter turnout at the end of the day in both of them, more like congressional vote turnout. And I think Iowa's about 98% white. New Hampshire's 107% white. And a lot of Hillary's base is in the African-American community. So if she moves to South Carolina, that African-American vote in the Democratic primary should help her and give her a kind of a backstop.
So the comeback kid for Hillary Clinton is South Carolina and maybe even Tennessee, Larry, when we come here March 1st?
Possibility, yes. Clearly it's going to be if Hillary wins the nomination, she's going to win it in South Carolina, Tennessee, and the other southern primaries.
But what happens if there is an indictment? Again, you've got all this speculation, all this investigation of top secret information not being held properly, a lot of talk within the FBI that there may be an indictment pushed. What happens if she has to pull out? There's a talk that they want to put Joe Biden in. How do they do that with Bernie Sanders folks and not have the worst eruption at the Democratic convention since, 1968 in Chicago, if Bernie's people feel like you stole the nomination from him?
Larry, this campaign keeps coming back to 1968. Sanders is actually running an ad in New Hampshire with Simon and Garfunkel's America song. I keep waiting for somebody to bring out the old Clean for Gene T-shirts and stuff. I mean, it's
let me show it to you. I had one in 1968, then I switched to Bobby. But yeah, it is 1968. Go look at the old clips of the Munsters. Only people with Michael hair remember this show. It's Ted Cruz. Eddie Munster is Ted Cruz grown up. Maybe grown up. Yeah, it's 68 and 72. McGovern's an easy stand-in for Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary. I don't think there's any chance.
Somewhere warming up behind the stands, someplace that we don't see him. Is he getting ready to come in, or who else jumps in? I mean, if Hillary Clinton's invited, she's probably toast.
He's ready, but I think Steve's right. If the powers that be in Washington connive to grab the nomination for Vice President Biden when he has not run in the primaries, I think you see a meltdown.
And your deadlines to get on ballots are fast approaching. Now, you've got enough superdelegates at the Democratic convention to almost be able to give it, but to bring it with a guy who won the first two primaries, if he wins the caucus in New Hampshire, and then not let him have the nomination.
And then going back to 68 shades of Hubert Humphrey. Remember who Clean Gene knocked out in 68 was the incumbent president, Lyndon Johnson, who decided not to run, and then Hubert Humphrey got in.
Now, Republicans may be better with a horribly wounded, limping into the game Hillary Clinton than a Joe Biden who comes in fresh off the sidelines with a clean uniform and with a lot of momentum because he hadn't been through the struggles of a primary.
So on the Iowa side, you believe, Steve, it is down, once we clear the smoke out there, it's going to be between Trump and Cruz?
I think Cruz wins in Iowa because it is so much ground game. As Larry will tell you, when you go to Iowa, it's not just show up and vote like you do New Hampshire.
Stay there for 2-3 hours.
In a snowstorm that's likely coming early this week. and the difference that the Trump people keep saying, yeah, but Donald Trump has turned out people in big numbers when he's there. at these caucus meetings, you're going to be at some little community center in the middle of nowhere, Iowa, in a snowstorm, and Trump's not going to be there.
He's not going to be
Will
at the
his
gym
people show up for 3 or 4 hours
in
to
Waterloo?
sit there?
He's not going to be at the gym in Waterloo?
Probably not. But he did stay at the Holiday Inn Express, apparently, though, in Iowa, to show he is a man of the people.
Yeah, my wife certainly has the right take on this, and she's saying it every day now. Why are my options and opportunity about who I can vote for president going to be determined in a snowstorm in Iowa and a snowstorm in New Hampshire? When are we going to get to where we have early enough primaries in Tennessee, other states?
Well, even though
not
the
going to
polls
happen
may
this
show
time.
Trump, I think MTSU had a poll, which of 600 registered voters, who polls registered voters at this stage of the game versus likely voters? I mean, so it's a ridiculous poll. But at the same time, when you look at Tennessee's history, I mean, we've picked, Santorum and Huckabee when they weren't standing any chance of winning because of that strong evangelical base in Tennessee. So I think Donald Trump may do well in the polls, but when you get to the actual votes in Tennessee and Super Tuesday, I think Cruz is going to continue to do well. And where Cruz has an advantage in Iowa right now, he has slipped behind in the polls. The expectation game is the whole game in Iowa. Trump is ahead in the polls. If he loses in Iowa, then it's like a pick six in football. He not only has lost ground, Cruz has gained ground, and it's kind of like a bigger swing and gives Cruz, I think, more momentum. And I think he will win in Iowa.
Larry, let's talk a little bit about Trump in that regard. He certainly has been outspoken throughout this campaign. You can imagine what his consultants and advisors think. The other day he even talked about, I could shoot people on Fifth Avenue and not lose any votes. What is he likely to say if he loses or doesn't do as well?
I can tell you what he'll say.
The ego's going to take a big hit here.
No, maybe behind the scenes, but for the public and on television,
I knew it. Yeah,
what Trump is going to say if he loses Iowa is, I won Iowa. I started at 8% and I got 28%, or whatever the losing number is, and I won Iowa. Let's march on to New Hampshire. He's a great deal maker. He understands how to negotiate. Therefore, he's going to redefine winning in Iowa, claim victory, march on.
I'd say campaigning on the idea that you can shoot people on Fifth Avenue and still not lose any support is the kind of New York values that Ted Cruz was talking about that may not play well in the rest of the country.
Steve, let me ask you this question. It was something that Larry brought up with his wife, Sarah Lee. Iowa and New Hampshire always kind of warp the early part of the race because they have unique characteristics that aren't reflected in the rest of the country. So are some of these other midstream or establishment candidates going to try to hang on and do better? Because there's lots of other primaries and caucuses that come up and go, I think, all the way into May.
Well, first of all, it's hard because the money dries up if you don't finish in those top couple of slots in Iowa and New Hampshire, and it gets real expensive. I mean, you go into the Super Tuesday SEC primary and you're playing in 7 or 8 states, it is real expensive to play. The biggest thing I think coming out of Iowa, and this could change things in the future, is that the big untouchable third rail of politics in Iowa has been you can't not be for ethanol. Well, if Cruz wins in Iowa, having not been for ethanol, then maybe Iowa doesn't matter as much because that issue doesn't matter as much, and you may actually see politicians say, wow, you can tell the truth and still win Iowa.
and let's remind the viewers what we're all aware of. Usually whoever wins Iowa doesn't become president. It's not that clear a predictor of what's going to happen.
Yeah, for the Republicans, Huckabee and Santorum were the last 2 winners.
Right.
Let's take a break. We're talking with Steve Gill and Larry Woods. We're talking about 2016 presidential politics with the Iowa caucus coming up on Monday and the New Hampshire primary the following week. Back to continue our conversation, focus on Tennessee after this break.